4 minutes until showtime. 3 minutes until showtime. 2 minutes until showtime. 1 minute until showtime.
Alrighty, everybody, welcome to First Down with Zute, the show where we bring you your NFL talk straight up with no twists. And how's everybody doing out there? My Twitch audience live Friday night. No NFL games this weekend, but plenty to talk about, plenty to digest as we get ready for the big game in just a little bit, right? What is it, February 13th? We know now who will be in the Super Bowl. The Los Angeles Rams and the Cincinnati Bengals, right? And, all that talk about preseason picks and all that, I don't think anybody had the Bengals going to the Super Bowl. So much for experts, right? When you don't pick, anybody who picked the Bengals to go to the Super Bowl, I want to know who they are because they don't exist, right? But we're going to talk about both of those championship games, and we're also going to reveal my top 10 championship games of all time. So that's the agenda for this evening, and let's get right down to it. The two championship games to me basically came down to two plays, right? It's much more sophisticated than that, but I think these two plays were the game, right? And we're talking about the first game as we see Mr. Jamar Chase as as a rookie, is getting himself into the Super Bowl, and Chase didn't have a crazy big game against the Chiefs like he did first time around. But he was effective enough, right? But to me, the play of the game was at the end of the second quarter when the Chiefs were rolling. They had easy points, right? Even if it was a field goal, they had easy points. I did this game live on Twitch. And I even said it at the time, with the few seconds to go, if they wanted to take one more shot at the end zone, they had to be quick about it. Otherwise, settle for three. I wouldn't have been opposed to them just kicking the field goal there, but they didn't do either. They went for a trick cutesy play, a screen pass to Tyreek Hill. Bengals were all over it, and they stopped them, and everything went downhill after that for Kansas City. I don't think it's a coincidence. And shout out to Kong, who joined us during the game, and he said it right away. The minute they didn't get those points, he said they're going to wind up losing this game, and he was certainly right. And I had told you the week before that I would trust the Bengals defense to step up big much more than the Chiefs defense, and we certainly saw that in the second half as well. But if you're the Kansas City Chiefs and that offense and Andy Reid, and if I'm in the front office, I'm really upset about them getting cute at the end of that second quarter. They were getting the ball back in the third quarter. There was nothing wrong with kicking a field goal. I mean, if they wanted to get the touchdown to put the dagger in, I get it, but not on a screen pass. Try and get a shot at the end zone. You got wonderful skill players. Nobody's open. You throw it away quickly. Mahomes is good enough to handle that. But even that would have been somewhat of a risk because, if he gets sacked, if he gets pressured, if he's got to scramble, it might take too much time off and you don't get the chance, right? They needed to come out of that drive with points. They needed to end that half with points. They didn't do it, and it all went downhill. To me, that was the game, right? Obviously, the Bengals had to claw all the way back. They didn't get all those points right on one big play. So hats off to Joe Burrow. T. Higgins had a big game, and then Kansas City had a chance to end the game. And I, as I said at the time of the telecast, that they needed to get Travis Kelsey involved. They hadn't gone to Travis Kelsey in quite a while, and they weren't successful. Mahomes looked like a terrible quarterback in that second half. And then they started going to Travis Kelsey, and it was paying dividends. They were getting close, and it looked like they were going to get into the end zone and end the game in regulation. They were in field goal range, but they certainly had plenty of time and an offensive juggernaut to get in the end zone to end that game, and it didn't happen. And mainly the reason why it didn't happen was because of the pressure of the Bengals. They got to Mahomes, they sacked him, and the Chiefs had to settle for a much longer field goal than what was expected to to tie the game. And then in the overtime, they get everything going their way in the overtime, and they win the toss. So they get the ball first. Touchdown wins the game. But you were worried, right? If you were a Chiefs fan, you were worried because they hadn't gotten in the end zone in quite a long time. They hadn't looked good except for a few passes to Kelsey on offense in that entire second half. And you got to go to your guys like they did the week before, Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelsey. You got to go to your guys at the start of overtime, and they did not do that. The first two plays, they were calling Robinson's number, and I just couldn't understand that. And then finally on third down, They go to Tyreek Hill, but he was double teamed. And everybody knows what happened. Interception. Game over. Once they got the interception, you knew that Cincinnati kicker wasn't going to miss it. So hats off to Joe Burrow, hats off to Zach Taylor, hats off to Chase, Higgins, Mixon, who had a big important part in the game, and hats off to the Cincinnati Bengals, the unsung hero. We could talk about karma and things like that all we want, but that Bengals defense were the ones on the field that shut down the Kansas City Chiefs offense in that second half. They only allowed a field goal after Mahomes was having his way in that first half. So you got to give credit to the adjustments at halftime as well. You got to give credit to the Bengals defense for stopping Tyreek Hill on that screen pass at the end of the second half, right? They did not go to that play because it wasn't something that wasn't successful for them in the past, right? They were confident in the play. It was a stupid play, granted, but they were confident in it. They didn't just pull that one out of you know what. They went with it because they have had success with that. But the Bengals D was all over it, so hats off to them. So Joe Burrow, now in his second year, and remember his rookie season ended with a horrific injury, finds himself starting a Super Bowl. And he's a Heisman Trophy winner. So there's only two Heisman Trophy winners ever, quarterbacks, to win a Super Bowl. Roger Staubach, and does anybody know the second one? Jim Plunkett. Can Burrow be the third Heisman Trophy quarterback to win a Super Bowl? We have to wait and see. But what Joe Burrow has that Roger Staubach and Jim Plunkett did not is he won a championship at the college level. So he can potentially be the first quarterback to win a Heisman, win a championship at the college level, and win a Super Bowl. Tall tasks for sure, but he is the only one breathing air that has the chance to do that right now. So hats off to Mr. Burrow. So that's pretty much all I wanted to say about the first game, other than the fact that, and I talked about this with the guys I normally talk football with off the air. I'm not shocked at all that the Chiefs collapse. One thing Kong said that I didn't agree with him on, and I told him was that he was surprised that an Andy Reid team made such mistakes. I am not. Andy Reid has always been a mush. I've always said he was a mush. With my friends. Now, he proved me wrong. I did say he would never win a Super Bowl. And thanks to Mahomes, he has won. But how many tight playoff games? How many times has Andy Reid gone into the playoffs with a very good football team and came up short in the playoffs? Quite a few times. Pretty much every time but one, right? Now, he did get the two Super Bowls that he lost, so that's something, right? That's something in his favor. But he had a lot of good teams with the Eagles, and they fell short. He had a lot of good teams with the Chiefs pre-Mahomes, and they fell short. And, he always does questionable things, right? So that play changed things, no doubt about it. But who's responsible for that play? I always find it a little weird when you have an offensive coordinator running the show, as the Chiefs have with Eric Bieniemy, but you also have the head coach who is pretty much calling the plays, right? I think LaFleur with the Packers does that as well. So, first of all, what the hell do you need an offensive coordinator for if you're the head coach and you're calling your own plays? It's mind-boggling to me. It's a waste of a paycheck. Right, Sean Payton too is no longer the Saints coach. He retired. I believe he called his own plays too. So I mean, and ultimately the head coach is supposed to take the reins and the responsibilities. But football's a weird game because you have so many different coaches. A lot of times your head coach is either an offensive or a defensive guy, and they have nothing to do with the side of the ball that they're not, that their origins aren't from, right? For example, Mike Ditka, right? He was a tight end, even though Ditka comes off as a defensive guy. He was a tight end. He was an offensive guy. So, I mean, he even said with the Bears. Even without Buddy Ryan, but especially when Buddy Ryan was the defensive coordinator, he never really had anything to do with the defense. Although he did want Buddy Ryan to stop running that 46 defense against the Miami Dolphins in the only game they lost, that Monday night football game in 1985. And Buddy Ryan did not listen. The coach wanted him to switch up, and Buddy Ryan said no. So you wonder. But in this situation, Andy Reid is an offensive guy. He gets a lot of praise for calling offensive calls. This has come out of the mouth of Patrick Mahomes himself. But then you have Eric Bieniemy, who's credited as the offensive coordinator and quite possibly could get a head coaching job, but I don't know about that, right? By the way, we're not going to discuss the whole Brian Flores thing and the lawsuit and the head coaching debacles with hirings of minorities on this show. We will tackle that in our Super Bowl show next week. So if you're looking to hear that, you got to wait a week for that. I want to really prepare. I don't want to just talk on the fly for that one. It's too important of a topic. But who gets the blame? I mean, ultimately you got to blame Andy Reid. But if Eric Bieniemy made that call, in my mind, that would hurt his chances. I wouldn't want that guy as my coach if he made such a stupid call at the end of the second quarter. I mean, I realize the body of work probably outweighs the bad calls, but you just blew a chance to get to a Super Bowl. It has to mean something. But that's all I wanted to say about that. Next game up was the NFC Championship game between the Los Angeles Rams and the San Francisco 49ers. The Los Angeles Rams on their quest to win the first ever Super Bowl for the city of Los Angeles. Obviously, the Rams won a Super Bowl under the St. Louis umbrella, but this is a little different. This is a little bit more special, I think, right? Especially for those lifelong Rams fans who started out when the team was in Los Angeles. But to get there, they had to overcome a huge obstacle. An obstacle that they couldn't beat for 6 straight games. An obstacle that they should have beaten, right? On paper, especially going into that game, too, everybody was saying the Rams are definitely the more talented team and they should win. They were at home. The Super Bowl was going to be in their own stadium. But the Niners had all the intangibles. The Niners had the momentum on the side, not just the unbelievable winning streak against the Los Angeles Rams themselves, but some really big wins down the stretch. One of obviously against the Rams to put them in the playoffs, and then they go and beat Dallas in Dallas, and they beat Green Bay in Green Bay. I mean, how could you go against that team? Well, you could go against that team if they're playing Matthew Stafford, Cooper Kupp, and the Los Angeles Rams. I mean, it was that close of a game, and you saw it go all the way down to the wire. And again, just like in the first game that we just talked about, I think this game, and even more so, this game came down to one play, the dropped interception. I mean, there were so many other things happening, of course, but that kid doesn't drop that interception, the Rams aren't going to the Super Bowl. It's that simple. He dropped it, and the Rams' chances of going to the Super Bowl went up immensely, and then the big plays after that made it certain, right? But that interception is secured. Game's over. 49ers get their 7th straight win against the Rams, and they get a chance to go in and try and win their 6th Super Bowl title. But he didn't do it. He dropped it. Right? So, but other things in this game where it's definitely worth talking about, especially in the playoffs. And, this is definitely evidence to have how good these players are. The comfort zone and the rhythm that Matthew Stafford has with OBJ in such a short period of time should not go unnoticed. I mean, that's because you're talking about two superior talents who have no doubt had their problems, but they have definitely clicked and meshed together in a really fast time where it's not really supposed to happen that way. And then there's Cooper Cup, right? And these NFL playoffs have been fantastic, and they've raised some eyebrows. But they've also raised some questions. And the questions that they've raised is, can we or should we change the overtime rules, right? Because poor Josh Allen, after blowing a ridiculous lead in the poor Buffalo Bills defense, didn't get to touch the ball in overtime. So now we got to change all the rules so everybody gets a chance, right? And by the way, not to get political, but if any of you conservatives out there are on board with changing the overtime rules, what happened to being irate about everybody getting a trophy, everybody getting a chance? No! It's sudden death. Oh, they change the rules as much as they possibly can. You can't win the game on the field goal on the opening possession. That's about it. Enough it is everybody should be able to touch the ball. Right? So you can't do that in the regular season. You can't ask these NFL players, especially after extending their season, to have college-style overtimes. You want to expose them to that much more play, that much more chance of getting hurt. It's not going to happen. So to me, it's always silly to change rules once you have the playoffs. I don't know if they changed this in hockey, but I know in hockey the overtime is based on a shootout in the regular season, and then they do away with that in the playoffs. I think that's dumb. You want to get the teams used to one way and one way only, and the only way to play overtime in the NFL is the way it is now. The rules should not be changed just because Josh Allen didn't get a chance to touch the football in overtime. Stop! You bunch of sheep, you snowflakes. I didn't like that. But I do think this playoffs should raise questions about changing rules. And Mr. Cooper Cup, I'm talking about you, right? If this playoffs has said anything, they should change the rules on how the MVP is voted. We got to stop this madness of letting the writers or whoever gets the votes for MVP submitting their votes at the end of the season. They should submit their votes at the end of the postseason. Things would be a lot different if that was the case. Right now, I said all along I thought Cooper Cup was the MVP. Uh, but I think these playoffs really don't leave any doubt. I think it's painfully obvious after the playoffs that Aaron Rodgers is not the MVP. Cooper Cup is the MVP. I mean, I can't imagine people disagreeing with me unless you're a big time Rodgers fan, right? I mean, they do this in other leagues as well. A couple of years ago, when when they were talking about Altuve versus Judge in baseball, uh, they do the same thing where they submit their votes at the end of the season, not after the postseason. And I had some debates with some people that there's no doubt that Judge should have won the MVP, not Altuve. And one guy said, "Yeah, well, if you're talking about the regular season, yeah, but I think it was obvious that after the postseason, by the way, which Altuve was found out to be cheating, after the uh, postseason, it was clear that Altuve was the MVP." But I was like, but wait a minute, there's no problem with that argument. The writers submit their votes for MVP at the end of the regular season, not after the postseason. Now, you know, obviously, I don't know even if they decided to take out. I don't know if they even decided to remove Altuve's MVP because of the whole cheating scandal with the garbage cans. Not to get totally off base here, but hopefully you get my point, especially with the NFL. And I haven't heard anybody talk about that, right? I haven't heard anybody discuss, well, maybe we should relook at when we are voting for MVPs. Maybe we should look at weighing the postseason heavily into the MVP discussion, right? Because if for the most part the MVP is going to go to a winning team, why not wait to see what the hell happens in the playoffs to give players an edge, right? If you felt that, it was close between Rodgers and Brady and Derrick Henry and Mr. Cup, the playoffs prove that there can only be one MVP, Mr. Cup, number 10, and he's probably not going to win it. I haven't heard anybody discuss that. And by the way, I wasn't going to bring this up, but I just thought of it, so might as well. That game in Kansas City, this whole debacle with the MVPs, it certainly fuels fires for all the NFL fixed conspiracy nuts. There's a lot of talk out there about the NFL being fixed. Now, I don't think the NFL is fixed, but this postseason certainly fuels a lot of fire for that. I mean, the way the Chiefs collapsed and Mahomes looked like he couldn't do anything in that second half, right? Once again, we have an MVP who shit the bed in the playoffs, right? I pay attention and I look. I want to give some weight to the conspiracy theory, see exactly what it is they're talking about. And one of the things that one guy says about the NFL being fixed is, and he points to the Raiders Super Bowl against the Bucs as a big one. Uh, he points to the fact that the NFL, they make sure they reward the team that is, set to lose with an MVP award, right? Rich Gannon, and that year, Rich Gannon won the MVP for the Raiders, and obviously the Raiders shit the bed in the Super Bowl. This year, Aaron Rodgers. Last year, Aaron Rodgers, shit the bed so Brady could win. I'm not sure why Aaron Rodgers would lose the Super Bowl with the chances on purpose this year. That kind of like puts a dagger in the whole conspiracy theory stuff, the NFL's fixed stuff. But these things here are, things to look at, right? When was the last time, and then how many times do NFL MVPs actually go on and win the Super Bowl? I don't know off the top of my head, but other than Brady, probably not that many. So once again, and as far as I know, right, they didn't announce the MVP yet, but it does seem like Rodgers is going to be the winner. But there you go. That's the story. And next week, we'll definitely talk more about the Super Bowl matchup. I'll give you my prediction. I'll give you my matchups. What check marks favor the Bengals? What check marks favor the Rams? And what do you think about that? And remember, you could go to Facebook and follow Zoot Sports Talk. You can follow me on Twitter at Zoot Sports Talk. And and we're going to start doing Zoot's Boxing Talk here on Twitch as well. If you're a boxing fan, look for Zoot's Boxing Talk as well. And Zoot's Sports Talk is now on YouTube, so you can watch those videos as well. So we're going to go right into it now. The top 10 championship games of all time. So I did some research. I watched most of the games. And I came up with my top 10 list of top 10 championship games of all time. I did not differentiate between AFC and NFC. Why? Not because it's easy, but because it's hard, right? 10 to 10. There's two each year since the merger. AFC, NFC, what are the 10 best up until now? And what I love about doing this and the whole Super Bowl history is it's easy paper trails. You got to be really lazy not to be able to find this stuff, right? Because it's out there, right? We're talking about from 1970, right? Now I've watched every championship game live since the 1981 season, which took place in 1982. The Cincinnati Bengals beating the Chargers, and the catch, the Niners beating the Dallas Cowboys. From that point on, I remember watching every single championship game, right? So I only had to go back from 1970 to 1980 to watch those. I remember vaguely 1980. I remember what was it, the Raiders beating the Chargers. I remember that vaguely. I can't say I sat down and watched the whole game though. And not every single game in its entirety is available on YouTube, but quite a few are. But the good news is that there wasn't that many epic championship games in the 70s on either side, right? But I watched pretty much every one that's available to see. I've either seen them all live or I went back and watched them on YouTube. So I compiled my top 10, which I think are the top 10 best. I think these are the 10 if you want to put in a time capsule and really show what the NFL is, NFL playoffs, win or go home, clutch play, all that stuff. I think I take care of that in all 10 of my games. There were certainly games that just missed the cut. I mean, there were a lot of great championship games in the 80s and 90s and beyond. So when you're talking about 10 from the year 1970, you're going to leave some out. So if I left your game out, let me know about it and we'll have a discussion. But without any further ado, number 10, the 1983 championship game, which obviously took place in January of 1984. The Washington, now Commanders. We want to talk about that right now, right? That's my team. Washington's my team, but now they are the Washington Commanders. But back when they were the Redskins, they were going for their second straight Super Bowl championship, and they had to get past Joe Montana and the San Francisco 49ers, who obviously already won one Super Bowl in 1981. And Washington won 24-21, and this is kind of a game that I think goes under the radar for being as good as it was. Washington got out to a big lead. Joe Montana led the charge back in the fourth quarter to make it a 21-21 game. And Joe Theismann was able, with the benefit of a couple of pass interference calls, was able to get Washington into field goal range towards the ends of regulation and kick a game-winning field goal. Now, that was not the last play of the game. The last play of the game was Montana going deep and getting an interception. But, that field goal pretty much ended the game. Now, a lot has been said about the 49ers being robbed in this championship game because of those two bad penalties. And they were questionable pass interference calls. I think Art Monk was the receiver twice. But what people don't talk about is the fact that that game should have been way out of reach once the fourth quarter started because Mark Mosley missed 4 field goals. He finally hit the one at the end of the game, but he missed 4 field goals. So the 21-0 score going into the fourth quarter, they didn't quite display the dominance that Washington had in the first 3 quarters. Even if Mosley hit 3 out of the 4 field goals, that would have been much bigger deficit for Montana and the Niners to overcome. But nonetheless, it was a great game. It was an exciting game. Washington had an unbelievable year that year where they won 14-2 and broke all kinds of records for points at the time. And they were actually I think they were double-digit favorites going into that game. And, if I'm making a time capsule of what the NFL is, I think this game should be on the top 10 list of all-time championship games. Number 9. This one might not make most people's list, but I really love this game. The 1995 championship game where the Steelers beat the Colts 20-16. The Colts had Jim Harbaugh as their quarterback, captain comeback. The Steelers had Neil O'Donnell, the only Steelers quarterback to get to a Super Bowl and not have a Super Bowl championship. And this game came right down to a Jim Harbaugh Hail Mary that just missed. It was a great game, and it should be and it also belongs in the time capsule of great championship games and a solid representation of the NFL. So that's number 9. Number 10, we just saw it last week. The Cincinnati Bengals coming back against the Kansas City Chiefs to win 27-24 in overtime. There are many reasons why you put this game in your top 10 of all time, right? You got Mahomes, you got Joe Burrow, the Joe Burrow story officially beginning, getting to his first Super Bowl. But you have the biggest example of not to get cocky that you could possibly have. Take the points when they come. That's what this game was all about, right? Take the points when they come. The Chiefs didn't do that, and as a result, Bengals tied for the biggest deficit in championship history to come back from. Should certainly be in the time capsule. Number 9, and I hate to do this because I hate those freaking Giants, but you got to have the three-peat game in there. That's number 7. That's my number 7 pick. 1990 championship game, which took place in 1991. They called this at the time the three-peat game. The San Francisco 49ers were going for their third straight Super Bowl. Nobody thought they would lose if they got there. They beat the Cincinnati Bengals in 1988. In 1989, they were a freaking juggernaut. Only lost twice and breezed through the playoffs to win their second straight Super Bowl, their fourth all time. I mean, they destroyed the Minnesota Vikings. They destroyed the Los Angeles Rams in the championship game, a team that gave them trouble and actually beat them once during the regular season. And then they destroyed Elway and the Broncos. And their dominance continued in 1990. Right? And they beat these football giants in a Monday Night Football Classic. But thanks to Matt Barr's 5 field goals and a ridiculous defensive effort by the Giants, they stopped the dreams of a three-peat with Jeff Hostetler as the backup quarterback. And obviously everybody knows what happened once they got to the Super Bowl. And I hate the Giants. Did I say that already? But I'm not talking about what are my favorites because this game was not one of my favorites. I'm talking about what should be considered the best championship games all time, what belongs in the time capsule to best represent the NFL, and this is certainly one. Some people might even argue this should be even higher, but I have it at 7. Number 6, the Los Angeles Rams, no, the St. Louis Rams over the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the 1999 championship game, beating the Tampa Bay Bucks and a ridiculous defense 11-6. This was one of the most intense games I ever remember watching, right? We're talking about the greatest show on turf. Marshall Faulk, Kurt Warner, Isaac Bruce, everything, right? Dick Vermeil making his resurgence after a failed effort at the Super Bowl with the Eagles. And the one team that gave them issues, the one defense that kind of like said, no, 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 not on our field, was the Tampa Bay Bucks. And this one was a drag-out affair where Kurt Warner, to me, more than any other game, proved that he is worthy of all the accolades and the Hall of Fame. I mean, in this game, Warner did not have a good game. He threw 3 interceptions in this game. But late in the fourth quarter, he threw the big touchdown pass to put the Rams over the hump. Who indeed caught that touchdown pass? Does anybody remember? I'll give you a clue. Shampoo. That's right. Ricky Prohl. Kurt Warner and Ricky Prohl put the Rams into the Super Bowl. Many people consider this the Super Bowl, right? Whoever wins this is going to be the Super Bowl champions. And even though the Rams had a tougher time than most people expect against the Titans, that's exactly what happened. This game had everything. It was one of the best defensive games you're ever going to want to see. And it is my number 6. Let's go into the top 5. Once again, the Giants driving me crazy. beating the Green Bay Packers in overtime, 2007, 23-20. Brett Favre once again does not come through in the big playoff spot. This game was epic overtime affair, epic long game in the cold. It had everything you could ask for, and it certainly is worthy of even being. You want to even put it higher? I have no problem with that. 23-20, my number five. So now we get into the top four. How many of my picks are matching yours? Now, I said the 70s didn't have that many great epic championship games, but they certainly did have one. At number four, 1975. The Steelers over the Oakland Raiders 16-10. This was a brutal physical game. This took place pre 1978 when they loosened up the rules on defense, where the offense got to open up a little more. You want to look at the history of football. There's different ways that you got to break it down, right? Currently, now with all the shotgun stuff, like one was the evolution of having the majority of your snaps in shotgun. That you got to look at, definitely changed the game. And before 1977, when they had much stiffer and harder rules, the defense had much more freedom. And this was brutal. And this is another reason why Terry Bradshaw, to me, is one of the best big game quarterbacks. At that time, Bradshaw wasn't like a stellar quarterback, even though he, in terms of the regular season stuff, he already won a Super Bowl in 1974, obviously. But a lot of people said that was mostly because of the defense, not because of Bradshaw. And this game was a defensive drag out. And just like Kurt Warner in his championship game that's on our list, Bradshaw did not have a good game. He had 3 interceptions in this game, but he threw the big touchdown pass in the fourth quarter after Stabler and the Raiders cut the lead to 3. Bradshaw responded with a touchdown pass to Lynn Swan. No, I believe it was John Stallworth, to take the Steelers to their second straight Super Bowl and win their back-to-back. This game is available to see on YouTube. I actually have it on DVD. I got this game before games on YouTube were that big, but I recommend you watch this one, 1975 championship game. So let's get a little closer now to the top 10. Is your game missing? Will it be in the top 10? I mean, the top 3, rather. Let's see. Number 3, Peyton Manning and the Colts finally do it. 2006, they come back to beat the Patriots. Brady and the Patriots 38-34. This was a great game. I mean, one of the benefits of remembering games live is you don't really have to go back and do much. Maybe you want to get a recollection of the numbers, but I remember watching this game and I remember thinking that the Colts were done. They once again they were going to lose to Brady and the Patriots, and they made a miraculous comeback. Defense, special teams, turnovers, everything. Peyton Manning had himself a pretty good game as well. He had about 349 yards. A classic game. Maybe people might think it is a little bit too high on the list, but I remember watching this game and saying, "Wow, it doesn't get much better than that." And it has the caveats of Manning finally beating Brady. This narrative that Brady always beat Manning is out there, but that's not exactly true. It's true that Brady obviously won more Super Bowls than Peyton Manning, but the idea that Peyton Manning never got the better of Tom Brady in the playoffs is a false narrative, and this game at number 3 will go into the time capsule and prove that. Top 2, who do you got? Is there any doubt what the top 2 are going to be? There shouldn't be, but maybe there is. Number 2, The Drive. Broncos 23, Browns 20, 1986 championship game. When the game seemed to be done, John Elway orchestrated a 98-yard drive where he had to convert multiple fourth downs to put the game into overtime and to win it in overtime. An absolute classic. Now, one of the things I found extremely strange about this game was that the Browns, who were the home team, were wearing their white jerseys. I never understood that. But other than that, this game was perfect, right? And how do you know a game is so good? Because you know the game by a title. If you say the drive, you know exactly what we're talking about, which is the same for our number one pick. The number one, the absolute best championship game of all time is The Catch. No question about it. And again, I hate the Niners just like I hate the Giants, especially the Joe Montana Niners. Hated them. Never rooted for them. Not once. Except for when they actually, yeah, no, I was rooting for them in '90 because I hated the Giants more at that point. They failed me. So that's not exactly true, but I hated them. And I was being a Washington fan. I didn't like the Cowboys either. But this is one of the first big memories for me watching football. Montana and the Niners win 28-27. And obviously, Dwight Clark's catch has been looked at time and time again. But this game has so many nuances. It's so fun to watch. Vince Scully does the play-by-play. Can't get much better than that. I mean, that's odd in itself, right? Vince Scully doing the championship game here. And one of the things that I think people forget about with this game is the catch didn't end the game. Dallas had a good chance to come back and win this game, right? They only needed a field goal to win, and Danny White, with about 40 something seconds to go, hit Drew Pearson across the middle. Beautiful pass. Three Niner defenders in the area, and not only does White put it perfectly, he puts it where there's yak to be had. And if it wasn't for Eric Wright making a tackle from behind, grabbing the jersey in the back of the jersey essentially to drag Pearson down, Pearson would have been gone for a touchdown, no doubt about it. How many people know that? How many people remember that? When do you ever hear anybody talking about that? Eric Wright should go down in history as one of the most important San Francisco 49ers of all time, and nobody knows who the hell he is. Right? So he makes the game-saving touchdown tackle, right? Because I don't think the Montana would have been able to come back from that if they ran in for the touchdown, but you never know with Montana. But there's like 30 something seconds to go, and now they're in field goal range, right? It's 1st and 10 on the San Francisco 44. Dallas still has a timeout. They had Raphael Septien, who was a good kicker. They certainly had a chance to get into field goal range to win it. And what happens? White gets hit. He fumbles the ball after making such a great throw rather to Pearson and trying to be the Cowboys hero, trying to get out of the shadow of Roger Staubach. And it looked like that was going to happen for him. Right after that, he fumbles, he gets hit, he fumbles. Of course, the Niners recover. And Danny White, just like that, is on his way to losing his second straight championship game because they lost the year before to the Philadelphia Eagles. And they wound up losing the next year to Washington. So Danny White, just like that, could have been the hero, could have erased the catch. Nobody would have cared about the catch if the Cowboys came back and won. But just like that, he becomes the 3-time loser in the championship game. And the other thing that's amazing about that, if you watch it and you look at the NFL now, the Cowboys were not in shotgun. Game on the line, less than 40 seconds to go. They need probably another good 15 to 20 yards to get into a good field goal position. And they're under center. If that's not evidence that the game has totally changed, I don't know what is. And Tom Landry was the first guy to start the shotgun with the Cowboys. They didn't call shotgun on the pass before the Pearson, and they didn't call shotgun then. That would not happen in today's NFL. Now, that's not to say that the pressure still couldn't have come, because we see guys getting pressured and getting sacked in shotgun all the time. But that's just evidence of how much this game has evolved in a relatively short period of time. So there you go. My top 10 championship games of all time. I can't see how you could have anything else but the catch, but everybody's entitled to their own opinion. What would your top 10 championship games of all time be? I'm curious. And you could hit me up on my email, zoot71 at yahoo.com, and share your thoughts. And yeah, so that's it. So let's recap the top 10. Number 10, I have Washington 24-21 in the 1983 championship game over the 49ers. Number 9, in 1995, Steelers 20, Colts 16. Number 8, in 2021, the Bengals beat the Chiefs 27-24 in overtime. Number 7, the three-peat game, Giants 15, 49ers 13 in the 1990 championship game. Number 6, the St. Louis Rams over the Tampa Bay Bucks 11-6 in 1999. Still one of the most intense games I ever remember watching. Number 5, again in overtime. This time the Giants beat the Packers in 2007, 23-20. Number 4, the lone representation of the 70s, the big bad 70s. My day. I could only find one. There are a couple of others that just missed, but not that many. Steelers 16, Raiders 10 in the 1975 championship game. Number 3, Peyton Manning finally gets to the Super Bowl by beating Mr. Brady in a championship game, 38-34 in 2006. Number 2, The Drive. Do I have to say any more? And number 1, The Catch. That's my top 10. So remember, if you are watching us on Twitch and you like what you see, give us a follow. The 25th follower has a chance to win I Am Duran, boxing biography, Roberto Duran. And where did he go? I can't find him. And, or rather, you get your choice. Russell Westbrook Chase variant. Only 1,000 of these were made. This is 922 of 1,000 when Russell was on the Oklahoma City Thunder. That's my gift to whoever the 25th follower is of Twitch. Next week, we'll do a big breakdown of the Super Bowl. I'll provide my analysis and prediction, and we'll talk in length about the Brian Flores lawsuit. Talk a little bit about the upcoming draft. Tomorrow we have the Senior Bowl. I'm going to check that out. Looking at a lot of these mock drafts, we see some differences of opinions along the way. And it's always fun to look at the mock drafts and see, and if your team has a pick, where is it? What do you want them to do? Do they do what you want them to do? Last year, I wanted Washington to draft Harris, the running back, and they didn't do it. This year, well, I'll save what I want the Commanders to do. And what other choice do I have but to embrace such a terrible name, the Washington Commanders? I mean, it's a poor name. I don't know how they came up with that name, but if you want to look at it as a half full experience, at least it's not the Admirals, which is worse than another name they were throwing around. And at least it's no longer the offensive Redskins. So we all have that. But thank you for joining us. Until next time, Zoot out.